Point Paradise is probably my favorite place in the world, or at least it used to be. For those not familiar, it's a small, exclusive coastal community, about an hour north of San Francisco. Over 100 miles of hiking trails twist through the community, from the redwoods all the way to the sandy beaches of the Pacific Ocean. It's not uncommon to spot bobcats and badgers on the trails, red-shouldered hawks, and barn owls in the trees, and elephant seals on the beach. It's a dream for a nature lover like me. I worked as the on-site concierge for a property management service in Point Paradise. The title sounds fancy, but my job was not glamorous. I performed what my boss called gray zone tasks. Basically, if it didn't require a licensed professional like a plumber or an electrician, I was your gal. I checked mouse traps, patched up leaks, and plucked mushrooms out of the corners of humid bathrooms. I was also on call for any and all issues our visiting guests might experience. That mostly consisted of resetting Wi-Fi routers and helping old people operate the smart TVs. Summer flew by and fall was busy with Halloween and Thanksgiving, but after the holidays, everything slowed down for the winter, and the vacation cabins sat vacant. I enjoyed the slower pace after such a hectic first 6 months on the job. I had more time to sit in the coffee shop and work on my poems, but soon my boss took notice and started assigning me new tasks. On the day it happened, she asked me to inspect the 4 cabins up on Panoramic Hill and take notes on what needed to be fixed. I started with the cabin at the very top of the hill with the best view of the ocean. That cabin is called Wildwood, a name chosen by the man who built it in the early 1900s. He was a banker in San Francisco, and the cabin was an engagement gift for his fiancée. The couple planned to use the place as a summer retreat, but the woman disappeared before the cabin was finished, and the grief-stricken banker spent all his money trying to find her, to no avail. I got all this background on the cabin from Greg, the town handyman, who offered me a ride up the hill in his truck. As we ascended the hill up to Wildwood, I told Greg about how, in the fall, I found 13 banana slugs oozing along the kitchen floor in that cabin. I'd never seen banana slugs work their way into a cabin before that, let alone 13 of them. It's because it's so high up, Greg told me as his truck coughed out exhaust. The woods up here were never meant to be developed. It's kind of messed up if you think about it. All these redwood cabins in the redwood forest. Greg had lived here his whole life, almost 80 years, and was passionate about conservation. What's messed up about that? I asked. The cabins are so cute and cozy. We chopped down these ancient, towering trees, living things, mind you, and made little vacation cottages out of their corpses. Trees can't be corpses, I said. Why not? We kill them when we chop them down. They're dead, but they're not bodies. Corpses are dead bodies. We were nearing the top of the hill now, deep in the redwoods. Greg turned onto the gravel road that led to Wildwood. The ocean is a body of water, he said. One day the ocean will be one giant corpse. What do you care? I asked him. He caught the implication. Because I'll be dead by then. I didn't mean that, I explained. All I mean is we should enjoy what we have. I gestured towards the panoramic view of the ocean. I mean, look at it here. A hawk swooped down and caught a gopher in its talons. It's breathtaking, Greg said. I'll give you that. But everything comes with a price. I knew Greg wanted me to ask him what he meant, but to be honest, I didn't want to hear another one of his out there theories about how the forest would correct the imbalance. I'd listened to enough of his ramblings in my 6 months at Point Paradise. My opinion, all the paint fumes he'd inhaled on the job made him a little unhinged. I opened the truck door and hopped out. Thanks for the ride. Stay vigilant, he said. January is always when the cracks open back up. He threw the truck in reverse and backed down the long driveway slowly, shrinking out of view. Inside the cabin, I worked through my regular routine. I ran the faucets, flushed the toilet, checked the ceiling for leaks, swept away any termite dust, emptied and rebaited rodent traps. Then I did a more thorough inspection of the house, looking for little things that might be off. I took note of a few burnt-out light bulbs, dead AAA batteries, and the stereo remote, some weather stripping that needed to be replaced. The biggest issue was the fuzzy black mold that had started growing along the baseboards in the bathroom. I kneeled down to inspect it, covering my nose and mouth with my shirt, and noticed, in the corner, a small hole in the drywall. It was barely noticeable, the hole, about the size of a quarter, probably the work of an industrious mouse. They can squeeze into the space as small as a dime. Greg told me. Next time I was up here, I could patch it up with some spackle, or Greg could. He was always patching up holes. I shined my phone flashlight on the hole to inspect the damage and spotted something inside. I reached in with 2 fingers and pulled out a smooth, cool object. In my palm lay a small bone. Bones make me think of skeletons, of death, but most of all, a clean, white bone like the one I held in my palm made me think of what was missing: tissue, ligaments, blood. Where had those gone? Who had taken them? A clattering inside the walls. I paused, waiting to hear more. When I didn't, I snapped a picture of the bone and sent it to Greg, who moonlights as an animal tracker. Any idea whose this is? I asked. He replied right away. Where'd you find that? Wildwood, I messaged back. You know, where you literally just dropped me off. My guess was the bone belonged to a rat, because it seemed too big to belong to a mouse, and I couldn't imagine what else would be trapped inside the walls. That's definitely a metacarpal, Greg texted back. Human, how would a human bone get inside a wall? No way it was a person's. Greg had to be messing with me. Still, my mind spiraled, coming up with explanations. Maybe it belonged to a builder, I thought. One of the men who sawed the redwood 2x4s that made up this cabin's walls. He was a big burly man, in my mind, with a thick blonde beard, piercing green eyes. There he was, just outside the cabin, tapping his 4 fingers on the bathroom window. I hated my mind for doing this. Why did it always let me down when I was trying to come up with new poems in the coffee shop? But then shifted into overdrive in this moldy bathroom in the middle of the woods. I thought about what Greg said, how the cabin is a corpse we live inside, and decided to get the hell out of there. But what was I supposed to do with the bone? I couldn't leave it there, next to the bathroom sink. My boss would kill me if a guest stumbled across it, and it seemed disrespectful to hide it or discard it or stuff it back into the hole, so I slipped the little finger bone into my back pocket and fled. I had never noticed holes in the cabin walls before. Sure, we'd set mouse traps, but only to catch mice on a mission to raid the pantry or eat the fresh fruit we set out for guests. We never had issues with rodents taking up residence in the walls, and yet, on my inspection of the second cabin, I found another small opening. I'd leave this hole alone, I told myself. No need to find out what was inside. I noted it on my inspection sheet so that Greg could patch it up tomorrow. I continued on, moving through the large cabin, but each time I passed through the kitchen, I caught myself glancing over at the hole. I was strangely drawn to it. Before I left the second cabin, I stepped closer to the hole to note its approximate size in my list of repairs. Big enough to fit a tennis ball, I determined, and jotted down the note. It was only when I looked back up from my clipboard that I saw it there, the pocket knife. It lay at the entrance of the hole. How had I not noticed it before? I picked up the knife and turned it in my hands, noting its smooth ivory handle. I slipped it into my back pocket with the bone. In the third cabin, I found no hole, but as I went to leave, I noticed the coat closet was slightly ajar. I slid the door shut, and several trekking poles clattered to the ground. I opened the door, gathered the poles, and reached up to place them back on the shelf. Just as I let go of the poles, something crawled across my hand and tugged at my fingers. I shrieked and yanked my hand away, then slammed the closet door and rushed out of the cabin. Outside, I closed my eyes and took a few deep breaths. It was nothing, I told myself, probably only a mouse. When I swept my hair out of my eyes, the light caught something on my finger, a gold band studded with small diamonds. It was too tight to slip it off. In the fourth cabin, there was an incessant knock on the floor. I traced it to the couch. When I slid the couch away, I saw the hole, a vacant eye watching me, and I wanted to look back. I kneeled down next to the hole. Who's there? I called out and pressed my ear against the wall. Only rodents squeaked back. I found a trap in the kitchen, baited it, and placed it just outside the hole. The hand emerged, and snap, it shook wildly, trying to free itself from the trap. Hold on, I said, regretting what I'd done. I freed the hand from the trap. Once the trap was removed, for reasons I cannot explain, I continued to hold the hand. Its skin was taut, smooth and soft, delicate even, a young woman's hand, identical to my own, aside from the missing finger. I massaged the hand gently, trying to tell it I was sorry for setting the trap, and just when I relaxed, the hand clutched my wrist. I twisted away and ran out of the cabin, all the way down the hill and back into town. The sun was setting when I arrived at my Prius, which was parked outside the property management office. The pocket knife was digging into my hip, so I tossed it on the passenger seat with my inspection notes and went inside the coffee shop next door for a vanilla latte. The barista had already started to mop the floors, but it was still 15 minutes before closing. I sat down at a corner table near the window with my journal and, to clear my head, tried to write a poem, but I was distracted when the sheriff waltzed by and took an interest in what was in my car. I went outside to talk to him. He leaned against the car. "I haven't seen a knife like that in a while," he said. "Where'd you get it?" "Found it in one of the cabins up on the hill," I told him. "I work for the vacation rental agency." He cupped his hands over the window to get a closer look. "Can you open the car door for me?" I unlocked the car. He inspected the knife carefully. "I'll need to take this in," he said. "Evidence." "Evidence of what?" I asked, sliding my hand with the gold band into my pocket. I didn't want him to confiscate that, too. "How long have you worked in Point Paradise?" he asked. 6 months. "So you haven't spent a January here?" "No. Every January since I've served as sheriff, someone's gone missing, and I've been the sheriff for a long time." "Where do they go?" I asked. "We don't know," he said. "We never find them." "Is that what happened to the bride?" I asked him. "Who?" "The woman the banker built the cabin for," I clarified. "That was over 100 years ago," he reminded me. "I haven't been the sheriff that long." When I went back inside the coffee shop to finish my poem, the worker shot me an annoyed look. "I'll just be a few minutes," I told her. I sat down with my journal and vanilla latte. I was pleased with my opening line, and after the chaos of that day, finally managed to lose myself in the rhythm of the language. I was so invested in that poem that I didn't even notice the cold fingers wrap around my ankle. The hand gripped my leg tight and pulled me towards the wall. The chair squealed across the floor, and I tumbled to the ground. The worker raced out of the back room. "Look what you've done," she said, pointing at the wall. "You put a hole in the wall." "I'm sorry," I said. "I have spackle in my car if you want me to." "I don't want you to do anything," she said, annoyed. "Just leave." "I should really fix this," I told her. She pointed to the door. "Get out." I closed my journal and hurried out of the coffee shop. In bed that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the hole I'd made. I needed to know what was on the other side. But when I arrived in town, late that night, Greg's truck was parked outside the coffee shop. A single light was on. I got out of my car and walked up to the window. Greg was spackling the hole shut. "What are you doing?" I asked. He let out a little yelp and turned around. "Geez, you scared me. Why are you patching it up?" "That's my job," Greg said. "I patch up holes." Near Greg's shoe, not far from the hole, I spotted a bloody tooth. "What's that?" I asked, pointing at the tooth. "Oh shoot, I must have missed one." He picked the tooth up. "Where'd it come from?" He put down his putty knife and set his hands on my shoulders. "Beautiful as it is, this land is angry with us, and you can't trust what you see coming out of the walls. It starts as fungus or rodents, but it becomes more sinister. I still hear it calling out to me after all these years, but you got to resist it. Not everyone can." "They got her?" I asked. Greg nodded. "I couldn't stay in Point Paradise after that. I drove south and crashed at my friend's place in San Francisco. I tossed and turned on her couch all night until I realized that damn finger bone was jabbing my side all night. I got up, lifted the window, and tossed that cursed thing into the foggy night. I'm writing all of this from a coffee shop in North Beach. This morning I climbed the stairs of Coit Tower and peered north towards the redwoods of Point Paradise. I got rid of the bone, but I still have that gold wedding band, the one from the closet. It won't come off. I can feel it pulling me back there, to those holes, those hands, to whatever lies beyond those walls."